Okay. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our first cover to cover parent book club for the 2023 school year. Yay! This meeting is being recorded for future use, and today we're going to be delving into the subject of learning styles with Cynthia Ulrich Tobias's book, The Way We Learn. For those of you that haven't got a chance to read the book, don't worry. We're going to begin by providing just a brief overview before engaging in a discussion. To start off, I'm just going to read a little bit from the back of the book, just for a general understanding of what the book's content is. So it starts, bringing out the best in your children by understanding the way they learn. If you're frustrated that your child isn't learning the way you did, chances are he or she is too. In this practical resource, Cynthia explains that understanding how you both learn can make all the difference. An expert in education and learning styles, the author offers practical guidance for teaching your children's strengths, both at home and in school, even when his or her learning style is different from your own. And that is The Way They Learn. So we're just going to jump in a little bit about what the book is. So first, Cynthia talks about, in this book, 5 distinct different learning styles for examination. The first is the mind style. Is there an echo? No, okay, sorry. Let me know if there's still an echo. So the first is the mind style, which stems from the Gregoric learning style, focusing on understanding how the mind functions. Next is she goes over the environmental preferences. They're derived from the done and done learning styles, which emphasizes the creation of an ideal study environment. And then she goes into modalities from the Barb Swassing and their learning strategies for memory retention. And then she gets into analytical versus global information processing as outlined by Whitcomb to help identify effective learning methods and study skills. And then lastly, she goes over Howard Gardner's concept of multiple intelligences and identifies the 7 areas of intelligence. Rest assured, I'm going to talk about these a little bit more before we open the discussion. So no worries. I know it's a lot. So first and predominantly through this book, Cynthia discusses the Gregoric model of learning styles. It's a big chunk of this book. They are referred to as the mind style, and this model consists of 2 perspectives, each containing 4 combinations of those. The initial aspect focuses on perception, so which relates to how we absorb the information. And there's 2 perceptual qualities inherent in each mind, which is concrete and abstract. So concrete perception entails taking things at face value, accepting them literally. And those who possess this quality often adhere to the saying, it is what it is. On the other hand, we have abstract thinking, and their perception often involves looking beyond the surface and relying on intuition. And these individuals with perception quality tend to adopt the phrase, it's not always what it seems. So we have 2 contrasting, it is what it is, and it's not always what it seems. And on the second part of this aspect, she talks about ordering. So this is specifically how we apply the information we perceive in a learning or working setting. And there's 2 distinct ordering abilities as well. There is sequential and random. So sequential is individuals who prefer to have structure and they like order, having a well-defined plan, and their guiding principle is following the steps in order to accomplish the task more efficiently. And on the other hand, we have random ordering individuals, and they're often perceived as spontaneous and more impulsive in their approach, and they adhere to the phrase, just get it done, when tackling assignments. So your dominant learning style is going to have like a blend of these two, resulting in like 4 possible combinations. And it's important to note that while you may exhibit characteristics from all of these styles, you're going to incline significantly towards like one of them. So we have FC, which is concrete sequential, and these people are hardworking, dependable, conventional, consistent, accurate, factual, stable, and organized. And then we have the AS, which is abstract sequential, and they are analytical, objective, knowledgeable, thorough, structured, logical, deliberate, and systematic. And then on the bottom we have with the random, it's abstract random, which is sensitive, compassionate, perceptive, imaginative, idealistic, sentimental, spontaneous, and flexible. And then we have the CR, which is concrete random. And these people are quick, intuitive, curious, realistic, creative, innovative, instinctive, and adventurous. Hang on one second, my cat wants out. She got stuck in my room. Okay, and she shares a small quiz in the book to figure out which ones you fall into. And she really suggests finding out what you are first before you start finding out what your children are. It's good practice to figure yourself out before you move on to other people. In the next section of the book, she talks about environmental preferences with the done and done learning style models. This includes environmental and psychological elements, and these 3 encompass like seating preferences. Where do your children prefer to be when they're doing their studying? Do they want to sit on the table, on the floor, on the couch? What are their lighting preferences? Do they prefer it to be bright or dimly lit? What are their sound preferences? Do they prefer music or silence? The temperature preferences, do they like a warmer or cooler environment? Intake preferences, which are, would they prefer to eat a snack or drink something while studying, or do they want to abstain from that and it's distracting? What time of day do they prefer? Do they prefer to do schoolwork in the morning or in the afternoon or the evening? What works best for those children? And then in the next section, she talks about modalities. So modalities are derived from Barb Swassing, which are learning strategies focusing on memory retention. And these styles are widely recognized ones you've probably come across in the past. And they are auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. So auditory learners learn best by hearing. They prefer reading aloud, repeating instructions, and having discussions. Visual learners learn best by seeing. They prefer visuals, using visual associations, watching demonstrations. And then you have kinesthetic learners, and they learn best by doing things, and they prefer to be physical, using movement, and doing like hands-on work. And then in the next section that she talks about with learning styles, she goes over how do we understand things? Are we analytical or global? And this is information processing. It's derived from the Wickens research on identifying efficient approaches to learning and studying techniques. And this method aims to evaluate how the individual retains memory. So first we have analytic, which they pay attention to details. They remember specifics. They prefer multiple choice tests, and they like to work alone. And they like things in an order, step-by-step way. And then you have a more global thinker who sees the big picture rather than like all the small details. They remember the main idea, prefer more essay style test, or more like using their language instead of multiple choice. They like to work in groups so they can have discussions, and they like to work on multiple tasks at once. It is important to note with all of these methods that each person is going to have a unique blend of learning styles, and there's no singular exclusive style that applies to all. So you can be a little analytical and a little global. You can have a mix of them. But you do tend to lean heavier into one or the other, but it's okay to have a nice mix. And then the final topic she talks about is multiple intelligences. And these are brought by Howard Gardner, and they identify these 7 distinct realms of intelligence, which is linguistic, logical, mathematical, spatial, musical, bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, and intrapersonal. And I'm going to read just the section in the back of this one called In a Nutshell, because I thought it was a really good ending point here about all of this. So in a nutshell, no single test can ever measure or predict a person's intelligence. Everyone can win when given the chance to show how they are smart. An acceptance of a theory about multiple intelligence helps us value the difference among various world cultures. Although our culture may place a high value on linguistic intelligence, in some areas of the world, one's ability to read and write would take a backseat to spatial skills if you need to navigate the seas to survive. The more we learn to identify and use multiple ways of being smart, the more efficient our education system can become in equipping the next generation for dealing with the real world. I really wanted to share that here because I thought it was really good. And now we've covered pretty much everything that the book is about. I didn't want to go too much because I really feel you should read it. I'm going to open it up now to discussion. I'd like to invite you to join in the conversation. I did put a few prompts into the slideshow right here. Feel free to unmute, raise your hand, or use the chat feature to share your thoughts or ask questions. I'll just read off what's here. What did you like best about this book? What did you like least about this book? Do you have a favorite quote from the book? What feelings did this book evoke for you? And what did you learn from reading this book? And the floor is open for everybody to talk and discuss.
Are we taking turns?
You can take turns or you can talk. It's fine.
So what did I learn from reading this book briefly is that my kids are young adults, but it really explained a lot about the interpersonal relationships. That put a lot of things in perspective for me, so much so that I want to go back and really read it a second time and see what else I can glean.
Yeah, I'm still like going back and trying to figure out what each of my kids kind of is and where they fall so I can help them. We even did one part of the book talked about the environment, and I had my kids actually do the activity where they sit down and draw where they like to study, what it would look like, what's around them, and all of that. And I really got to see that like my oldest doesn't really like being with other people in the room. She wants to be by herself. And then my other kids decided to follow suit and they were like, I want to be in my room too with all my stuff. It was really good to know that they enjoy their environment, and it's helping me make it better for them in their learning.
I think for me, and I'm like, man, I wish I would have read this book sooner, because I tried my best to let the kids like do their online classes and do their classes where they felt comfortable. But I mean, coming from being raised in, you sit down, you're at a desk, you focus, you concentrate, and that's just how it's done. It took me a while for me to like let my daughter sit in the living room, and I have a picture of her leaned up against the sliding glass of door from the backyard and the sun just hitting her while she's sitting there. And she's a very outdoorsy kind of girl, and here I am making her sit in this room, and because that's just how we study. So looking back, I'm like, oh, I mean, thank goodness that I did give her that chance to sit wherever she wanted. But now I'm like, now I get it, because where my son would just love to be in a room and just get it done, she needed to see trees and light and all of that. So it was just such an eye opener, and I really like it because, I mean, yeah, she's a senior in high school now, but at the same time, her study habits are still the same. Her logic of wanting to learn is still the same. Like, she has her window open, she sits right where the sun comes in, and so it's just interesting to know that's a learning pattern.
Mhm. Yeah. I really liked that about that, because like if I've I've been like, let's set the table, let's do our schoolwork all together in the same room, and they're all like, no, I want to be like in my own space. I don't want to be with everybody else, it's too distracting for me. And then my middle kid likes to actually sit on the floor, and she sits in this weird like hunched up way to do her stuff, and I'm like, you can't write that way. But if I make her sit up to write, she won't write. She won't spend very long actually doing it unless I let her crouch on the floor in this weird spider look and let her do her work.
Doesn't she address, the author addresses that it's about how choose your battles and give people an option, an out, so that they don't feel like they have no choice.
Yeah, she says that she was spread out on the floor with all her stuff, and then her husband comes in and goes, no, you can't do anything like that, get over here and sit in this desk and turn on this bright light and study. And she just sat there for like 2 minutes after he left, and then she spread back out on the floor. And I was like, that sounds about right. Yeah. Or my oldest is the opposite. She likes to sit at her desk and turn on the light, sort of. She likes a dim light, but she's very sit at her desk too. But not with other people in the room. She wants to be alone. So I really liked the part on oops, I went back to the beginning. This first one that she goes over, the mind style. That really helped. I had my oldest actually take the little quiz to figure out what she is, and we are so opposite, me and her. And I'm like, that might be why we like butt heads doing things, because I am concrete sequential and me be concrete random, like in that zone, but very concrete, and she is very abstract random. And so where I want to like plan our day out and structure the week, and she's like, no, I want to go with the flow and do when I want to. So
I could totally see where having
lot of
this chart hanging up somewhere where everybody in the house can see it would be helpful.
yeah.
And for everybody, oh, if I want them to do this, I know they're this, so I need to present it in this fashion to get the results I want.
I knew I was concrete sequential when she started talking about counting down from 5, or like counting up to 5 to like get your kid to do something. And I was like, that's me. I start counting down, like, I'm gonna get to 5. And then my youngest is the one that was her, the concrete random, where she's like, come on, get to 5, do it. Go ahead. What are you gonna do when you get to 5? And I'm like, nothing. I'm gonna do nothing. And she knows. Yeah. So where my middle is concrete sequential, and she'll listen and she'll go do it before I get count down. My youngest is just like, I'm gonna stand on this table. What are you gonna do? But it's really cool.
Would
So
anyone
this
else
is Mary. Can you hear me? This is Mary Bernard.
Yes.
How I intended to read the book, and I have it on my nightstand. I will read the book. I love this. My question is, does the author then synthesize the different, like the Gregoric learning method. I love that, what the slide's on now, but then how does she
Mhm.
combine that with the intelligences? Or are they kind of just separate things?
They're separate. She
Okay.
kind of combines it a little bit, but not really. There is a chapter 11 is putting it all together. And I didn't find it that helpful putting it all together.
Okay. It seems a bit overwhelming with all of it.
Yeah.
But yet, I guess if you break it apart, and again, I do love this dominant learning style. And like any book, you just need to take your takeaways, huh?
Yeah, there's a reference in the back about the different styles and like where to get more information about each of them. Because they don't come from her, they come from others. And I know for me, for like one of them, I really want to look into it a lot more. Which one was it? Oh, the done and done one, which she only goes over these parts of done and done, and there's a lot more to this learning method or learning style that they talk about. And that's the one I want to research more. I feel like this book is more like a brief overview, except for the Gregoric one, of each of these. Like modalities is kind of old thinking, because there's not reading, writing in here, and there's also social or individual, like when you prefer to learn by yourself or learn with a group, that's missing from this modalities that they've included since and I know for multiple intelligence, she really didn't, she kind of briefly went over each of them.
Well, they referenced that was the man that came
Yeah.
up with that he's working on adding more always.
Right. And this book is a little old, and this version that I have is like newer. I didn't realize that when we picked them, but where is it? Yeah, it's like 94. So I think there's some stuff that like needs to probably be updated. And if you're like really interested, like I want to research more about multiple intelligences because it sounds really good. To look at those separately. She does give a bunch of good references in the back.
My only thought is like when you think about all these things, it almost makes me feel like, well, what is the point of trying to cater to kids for like their every comfort when like the real world won't do that for them? So every time I get so tempted to like, okay, like what temperature do you like it? And do you like snacks? And do you like the light hitting you? And I start to get like so excited about how I can customize things. And then I'm like, but then when I can't provide those like conditions, or when the world doesn't provide those conditions, I get like, okay, am I helping or hurting by doing this? But then I guess at the same time, it's like helpful to know if there's really a stumbling block for your child, or just have like a flexible way of thinking and approaching is kind of like the takeaway I'm getting from it. But it does feel kind of overwhelming to like, especially when you have multiple kids, trying to provide each of them their ideal scenario. It's like, I don't even know how realistic that is to consistently deliver,
Yeah.
You know
She
what?
does go over, there is part of it that goes over like compromising, how to actually like sit down and make sure that that you're not just catering, like completely catering to your kid. That there is compromise in that. And then when you do go out into the real regular world, you yourself accommodate yourself. So if you actually work better by eating, you can do that in some jobs, or studying.
That's what I was gonna say, Shannon. If
Yeah.
I could expand on that, is my takeaway from that was, because my kids are older, is that it's helpful for everybody to learn the way they best learn, so that they can seek out and say, hey, can this be in written format, or can I see a demonstration of it? And so you can know to ask for what you need. so you can
They
better
can learn
understand.
to accommodate themselves when they get
Yeah.
older.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
and I think like my understanding is that it's avoiding, right now our kids are small in a sense. And so what it does is it avoids a lot of the kind of trauma in learning, you know. I was forced to sit down. I was forced to do this. If you are helping them understand who they are and understanding how they learn best, I feel like as they get older, they're going to understand, like when they're in college, like, dude, I need to go into a room and I need to study here. Like, I can't go to a dorm room full of people and study, or however way that be. I think it just helps them to understand themselves better and maybe give them a little bit more confidence in who they are and how they can best succeed with that. So helping them out and doing that, it's not, I don't see it as enabling them. It's helping them understand where they learn best. And having multiple kids, I hear that challenge. I definitely hear you when you're saying that. And sometimes I've had to be okay with one kid in one room doing it one way, one kid another, and I just had to like check on them and make sure that they're doing it. I had a son who, like, literally I had to sit next to him constantly while he was learning. He didn't need me, but I could not leave his, like, I mean, shoulder to shoulder touching. That's how intense it was. He's like, Mom, I need you here. My daughter, who's younger, very independent, she's like, Mom, it's all right, I got this. But I didn't want to take advantage of that because I'm like, well, I'm your mom, you need me too still. But because of their learning styles, and she's still this way where she's like, I just need to be in a room quiet, I need to focus. That's just how she was. And he's still, to this day in college, he needs someone next to him, so he always gets a study buddy. I'm just like, okay, how he was then is how he is now. It's like, I get it.
I like how she also talks about how she knows what her husband's styles are so that they can communicate better. I thought that was really interesting because, like, then I started making my husband take the test, and I'm like, okay, well, what are you, so that we can, like, make sure we're both on the same page. What are we both not understanding about each other? I think that's really helpful for, like, especially when you get in the workforce too. On her website, she actually has like a form, a document that you can like print out and give to your employer. That's like, this is my learning style, and this is how I best work and learn and stuff like that. And she used to, I don't know about anymore, work with companies on how to get them to understand each other's learning styles. And she brings that up a couple of times in the books, like where she's like, we had a group of analytical people and global people, and we separated them, and then we tried to get them to do certain things. So like, I love, my husband wants to bring it up. He works for Amazon. He wants to bring it up at Amazon, like, hey, can we bring this into work too, so that we can all work better together and communicate better? But it is definitely about compromise, like not completely like going around what's best for your kid, but like compromising on what works best for you and the family, especially with homeschool, because this is very much written as like they were in a public school system, where they're just doing homework at home, so they can come home, and if you can accommodate them while they're at home doing their homework, this is the best way to do that, and to make sure they're getting learning the best way for them while they're at school. But it is a little bit more tricky when you're at home with all your kids trying to figure out how to best do learning. Like, we still sit at the table every morning and do work together. Like, I'm not stopping that. Like, we're compromising. But when they do their individual stuff, they can go into the environment that's best for them and do that, as long as they don't need me too much. I don't want to be running between all the spaces for hours trying to figure it out. But like, if they need me, they come to me. Or when we do things together, maybe we don't just sit at the table. We can all go to the living room and like spread out, and they can like play with stuff, because I have like a kinesthetic learner who needs to be messing with things with her hand while I'm reading. But it's compromising a lot with homeschoolers. And yeah, this book does she kind of touches on compromise in there. I especially loved, like I said before, the part where she asked the kids, have your kid draw their best learning space. And that really helped, like I said, with my kids. But there were some things they drew in the picture that I'm like, that's not happening. Like, we're not having brownies every day. Like, sounds good, but not every day. Yeah. And I've always said, especially to my kids when we're learning things, take things like this, in, and then form it to fit you and your family better. It's like, was the thing, take what you read with a grain of salt. Make sure it fits you and your family, and do your own research on the side as well.
Yeah, personality wise, I found myself teetering on AR and CS, because I'm like, I can be one way at work because I have to be, and I'm one way at home because I'm mama and I have to be. So I'm like, I was like teetering on both of those, and I'm glad. I mean, I get it what she's saying, like, you're all of these, you just lean heavily to one side or the other. But I even when we talked about it in as family liaisons, I was like so curious to know, like, what's Shannon? What's Carrie? Like,
very concrete, sequential.
Because I want to make sure that I'm communicating and I'm meeting them where they're at as well. So I thought it was really neat. I'm always into those personality tests. Forget it. Like, what Hogwarts, class are you? I mean, I take those. It's fun. I think it's fun. I think it's just a way to discover each other. So, but this I really enjoyed this book, and I'm not an avid reader, I have to admit. And just listening to it, I actually went through it twice, because I wanted to make sure I really understood, and I really appreciate just how she was saying not to use it as a crutch. And I'm just paraphrasing. Like, not to say, okay, this is who I am and this is how I'm going to stay, and you have to accept me for who I am. It's like, it's more of like, let's understand each other, let's meet each other, and know that you're speaking in a way coming from that your learning type, and I'm speaking in a way coming from my learning type, and how can we understand each other? So and even our kids, like, how do we do that? And so I really enjoyed that part. And yes, one of them, when I was teaching my kids, I would use music a lot, because my son loved music and he still does. And so we talk about things that he learned when he was like in second grade, and he can't remember it, but he can sing it. And like, it was made up silly songs. I mean, we made up the silliest songs ever, but it helped keep it in store in his mind. So when I read it in this one, I'm like, oh, good, then I did do something right. I did it. I'm like, that worked. So I thought that was really cool. I'm like, all right, then it's that mama's instinct too, but it's just like, what do I need to do to reach him in a way that he's going to learn? And so I'm like, geez, where was this book 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Anyone else?
There's like a section, I had like the analytical and global part. I had to reread that a few times to actually like get it. I was like, what? I kept checking off every single one of those boxes. I'm like, I do all of these things. What are you talking about?
I don't think they should have been separate. They were all together.
Yeah, the little test that she has in here. Oh yeah, so it's A or B, right? And I'm like, you really had to like think which one you were. And I got like 6 out of 6 A's and 8 B's. It's really close. But it says that I'm more global, but I know I'm, after reading more, and more actually analytical. So yeah, like the part where like after you watch a film, what do you remember? Do you remember the main idea or all the details? And I'm like, details. Cannot remember what it was about as a whole. I can tell you every single thing about in the movie. All the little things. But if you ask me what it was about, I don't know.
And I think that's why, like, when I go to the movies, I love sitting with my daughter because I'm the one who's like, wait, what was that? I didn't get it. And she'll be like, Mom, look at this. Mom, notice this. And she's very, like, just intuitive and analytical. And she sees things that I was just like, I'm just looking at the whole picture. I'm like, oh, it's so pretty. So I'm definitely the AR. I'm like, oh, it's everywhere. And she's like, no, Mom, look at that. Go look at this. And so very detail oriented.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Are you finding things that are similar to your children, or in any work or relationship or even personal?
Yeah, Luce.
Hi, this is my first time joining your group. Thank you for hosting, and it's good because it got me to read a book. I mean, I didn't read it all the way. I'm still kind of like somewhere in between, in the middle. But I have two sons that I'm homeschooling, and they are very different, of course, and they're different than I am. So this book has really helped me realize where I am, and I think there's a part that talks about we think that communicating with people the way we communicate, I don't know if this makes sense, going to come out right.
Nope.
Right, it's the right
Yeah.
way of doing it. However, we could be speaking totally different languages, and that's how I feel, especially because they're boys. They're both boys, and it's like, sometimes hard to communicate. But I think I fall under the CS, at work for sure. And I think heard somebody mention that there's like a difference sometimes, right? Work mode and home mode. But because I work virtually and I homeschool, I feel like I'm always on that mode. So I think I need to just check myself, and just try to be a little bit more, not too straightforward, maybe be a little bit more sensitive, right? And just kind of stop and hear them out, because they're very different. My youngest one is the one that I think somebody mentioned, the daughter who keeps on asking like these questions, very logical, very curious, always has time for small talk. And I'm like, I don't have time for small talk. Just get the work done, So yeah, it puts things into perspective. It's kind of interesting to read something and say, hey, that's me, So yeah, that's kind of like where we're at right now. I look forward to learning more and hopefully bettering our home environment, because I have been stressed out. So
That's good.
yes.
I'm glad it helped.
Yes, it has been helping. Thank you.
I love when these things have exercises in them. Like, do this with your kids.
I found myself realizing, like, whoa, I don't think I would do well with like a dominant abstract sequential. I'm like, oh, I don't know if like we would connect. And so but then I can go back and say, okay, then how do I? That's someone who's a little too much for me. Oh,
I don't know if it was me or you.
sorry. Yeah, it was like, it felt like
You're stalled, Anna.
Oh, yeah, Anna, you keep freezing.
You know what you were saying,
the
Liz?
abstract sequential is like someone who's like way too much for me.
Mm. I think she also said abstract sequential is rare too.
Mhm.
Was that the one? Yeah.
What you were saying, Luz, about it made me think of when she was talking about communicating, how when you're talking to your children and you're not understanding the way they hear things or the way they process things, and you think they're not listening, or they're being disrespectful or something, when in fact they're just interpreting it, trying to interpret it the best they can. I thought that was really profound for me.
I love how she did these in the back, because then I could really tell in the back of each of the ones that okay, you probably can't see, but in the back house, it's like a kind of just a page and description of each of them. And then the concrete sequential, everything's like aligned in the middle. And then the abstract sequential, everything's kind of still aligned, but like here and here and here. And the abstract random is like still kind of aligned, but a little different. But then the concrete random's all over the place. And I'm like, that drives me crazy. I know that's not me. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah.
But the audiobook, don't listen to the audiobook. The audiobook doesn't go in order. It's all over the place when it reads these pages. And I was like, I can't listen. That's my sequentialness, right?
Oh my gosh, can I read something from the book?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes, can I read something from the book that just
Yeah.
like stands out? I'm on page 25 and it says the last paragraph, kind of like in the middle. It says, because okay, CSs are very good at making and keeping schedules and organizing and maintaining systems. List making comes naturally, and some extreme CSs even admit to being so dependent on a list that if they do something not on the list, they add it so they can have the satisfaction of crossing it off. Wow, this is so embarrassing. I think that's
Like,
me.
That got me.
my to-do list is
Sure
like,
you
I'll
list?
add
Right?
it.
Yeah.
I did it, I'll add it.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's like, I mean, somebody mentioned husbands, right? It's like sometimes our husbands don't do that, or a spouse doesn't do that, and you're like, I don't know, sometimes we could be judgmental and be like, that's the way to do it. You're supposed to do that. But little do I realize that no, they don't have to do it that way because that's not the way their brain works. Right.
Yep.
So I think that once we stop expecting others to act the way we do, I think we'll probably live a much peaceful life. That's for sure.
Yeah, my son will even, I mean, he's 19 again. My son will say, Mom, can you just make a list for me, please? So I know what needs to be done. Cause I can say the same 4 chores that he does since he was, for the last 10 years. But he's
Mhm.
like, can you just put it on a list so that I can have it and just check? He loves to check it off. And I'm like, oh, we're so similar. We're so similar. And so I do that for him. And my daughter, she just like, just tell me, I got it done. Like duly noted. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I know, but it's in there. But how do I know it's done?
Wow, I wish I had a mini me. So jealous.
I don't know if that's his learning style or if I just conditioned him. I don't know. We'll find out in the end, right? I mean, I'm just like,
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I always thought my oldest was a visual learner, and she took a little quiz that's more modern. It's online, I'm not sure where it is, but it's like a more modernish version of learning style quiz. And she came out with audio, and I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, Mom, all your visuals drive me crazy. I just tell me.
wow.
And I'm like, but I tell you, and you don't get it until I write a visual. She's like, no. That's your teaching style. It doesn't make sense until you write it for yourself and then explain it. I was like,
Mm.
oh, what?
And how old is your daughter, Shannon?
She's 14.
wow.
She's 25.
She is. All her friends call her, it's from some show, but they basically call her the dad of the group.
Mm.
She is the dad. She checks everybody, makes sure everybody's good, and tells them to stop being loud.
So funny.
She's also the oldest too.
She is the oldest. Yeah, she's got 5 years on her siblings. So
Yeah.
I appreciated that the book added the visual of that cartoon. I really do, because I'm like, I'm a visual person. So I'm like, oh, I get it. Like, oh yeah, that's me. And that's how it really like nailed it for me. Like, oh, that's me. Yeah. I saw the cartoon. I'm like, oh, that's undeniable.
were they in the room?
Yeah.
Yeah. They left that out of the audio.
I know, but I mean, I'm glad I was
Like,
looking.
what's happening? We're skipping paragraphs. I don't know if it was like added in this recent update since what is this, 2007? 2013. Oh, okay. Oh, the illustrations came in 2013.
Mm.
So I think that's the difference. Like, but yeah, this one where in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that was my room as a kid too. I feel like too that like as a kid I was more concrete random, and I've gone more sequential since I've gotten older. Okay, everybody's kind of, I want to go to this last slide really fast. Just this last one, I just want to say thank you before everybody leaves. Our next book is on it is a literary education by Emily Cook, and she also created the curriculum Build Your Library. It's adapting Charlotte Mason for a modern secular homeschool. And we will be back here on October 10th at 3 p.m. to discuss this book. Yeah, I'm super excited about this. I've always loved Charlotte Mason, but I haven't been able to really get into it. This should be an interesting read.
Well, thank you, Shannon. This was a good book. A good choice. I think this was a good start to our little book club and making sure that we we understand
Yes.
ourselves and how we learn, because I'm sure throughout all these books we're going to be learning a lot about ourselves and even beyond to our loved ones. So thank you for choosing this one. This was really helpful.
Thank you for being here and reading the book and coming and discussing with us. So I'm gonna let everybody go. I'm gonna stop the recording now. If I can remember where the button is.